Welcome to episode 3 of Shalom's Generation to Generation podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk, joined as always by Shalom educator Chris Kellogg. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Lonnie?
Doing well. Today we are talking about self-care for the caregivers, and for that we are joined by Charlotte Bayala, who is a yoga and meditation teacher here in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. Charlotte, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. So, I guess for starters, what to you, or how do you define self-care?
Self-care for me is any moment or anything that I can do to allow myself to relax. And it doesn't have to be a big event, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. Sometimes it's just a small break where I can bring myself back together and come back to focus on how I'm feeling.
So how do you teach others that type of, mindfulness? It's sort of the word that comes to mind there.
Right. In class, when I teach yoga classes, that is a big component of what we do when we're in class, making sure that people start to learn how to listen to themselves and what their bodies are telling them. Mm-hmm. When I am working with someone one-on-one or as a group, I really start to teach them how to make that mindfulness and that self-care part of their everyday lives, instead of feeling that they have to leave their homes or make extra time or have an extra expense to actually take care of themselves.
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens with people who are caregivers for their aging parents is they're just going, and they don't feel like, they say, I should be taking care of myself, but I don't have the time.
Right. And I think that once you're in this place of feeling overwhelmed, you don't necessarily have an idea of how to fit this into your day. And so when I teach people how to bring self-care into their everyday lives, is we will take something that they do every day and then change the feel and the intention of it. So then it's something that you'll always do, and you're just changing the feel of doing that as you're doing it.
So give me an example.
So let's say every morning I brush my teeth. Mm-hmm. And in the mornings, sometimes before you even get out of bed, you can start to list the things that you dread to do or the things that are coming up that you just don't want to get through. And you begin with stress before you even step off. And so when I'm brushing my teeth, I kind of visualize that I'm just brushing away all the residue from yesterday. Everything that has happened, all of those things that stressed me out or went wrong, and I'm just really getting rid of it all so that I can start fresh today. Because a lot of times we hold on to the things that we were upset about yesterday. Maybe they will happen again today, but at least I'll have the mindset of I'm starting new each morning, instead of holding on to that and just already be anticipating what is already maybe going to happen. But at least I'm able to be a little bit more resilient if I start with that mindset of I'm just letting go of yesterday, I'm going to start new, and let's just see what happens.
So it's really unburdening yourself frequently throughout the day.
Right. And sometimes it can be making something that you do feel special. For you to really relax, you have to take yourself away from the things that are weighing you down. And that's not easy to do. But I'll explain to someone who is asking me, what is just one thing that I can do? Like, how can I understand how I can fit this into my life? I'll tell them, well, let's just say you ask for water, and I bring it to you in a plastic cup. And then you drink the water, and the water tastes fine. You're just drinking it. But then the next time you ask me for water, I take away that plastic cup, and I bring it in a nice glass. So that glass contains the same type of water. There's nothing different about the water, but the intention that you are setting by looking at that water, you kind of see it as, well, this is maybe a fancy thing. Maybe I've always, drank out of something that's plastic or paper or a bottle. And I have this really nice glass. Changing just one thing that you do for yourself like changing from a paper cup to a glass cup. Of course, it could be a lot of different things, but making that one moment special for you, and so that you can just take a moment to realize, well, this glass is really pretty, and I can actually see the water now, and I can enjoy it. It'll bring your focus to that one moment instead of guzzling down water, thinking about what you have to do next, or being kind of going through what has just happened.
Interesting.
So who, from an age standpoint, who do you typically work with?
I work with all ages. I have people in my classes and people that come to workshops and talks that I give. They're from young adults to older people, which is at any age, basically. And, I have worked with children, but not on a professional level, just people that are in my life. They really love trying to make things special for themselves. Yeah.
So I can imagine many of the caregivers that we talk to in connection with our education series have kids. And I imagine that the stress of being a caregiver just kind of ripples down or cascades down to those kids. And so even as a parent helping your adult kids, because these are sandwich generation people,
right,
helping them cope with the stress and of the caregiving is probably important too.
Not only that, but if the caregiver can take these moments to take care of themselves, it'll start to allow them to maybe get through periods of time where otherwise the stress would cause them to, however stress shows up in people's lives. Sometimes it makes us cranky. Sometimes we're short with just people in our lives because we have so much going on. And so you can be a little bit more present with the other people in your life if you're doing some of these things. But also, it's a good way to show by example and help your children learn that these are some things that you can do. I've done them. Here's how I feel. So it's a good way of leading by example. It's really easy for you to tell someone you need to take care of yourself, but then there's never any follow-up. And so, people that hear it often, which normally caregivers will hear it a good deal of time, you really need to take care of yourself, and here's a list of things that you can do. But when you're taking care of a parent or anyone, and you're overwhelmed, and you're in this new world that you're not used to, you're not going to have the opportunity to sit down and study how to take care of yourself because you're already stuck in the middle of everything.
Much easier said than done.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think for some people, there's even, it's a little annoying for some people to continue to hear that, okay, you're telling me I should take care of myself so I can take care of my parent. How am I going to find the time to do that is usually the answer. And what I say is you don't have to find the time. What you have to do is try to figure out something that you do all the time so that is always accessible for you. It doesn't take any more time out of your day, and it's always there in front of you because you're always doing it.
So it's sort of like portable self-care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's more of maintenance self-care. The things like massages and special yoga classes and, the things that take you away from the person you're caring for, a lot of times I equate that to maybe that emergency self-care, like you really need it, right? Yeah. But if you can have that everyday maintenance self-care, it'll help you continue to go through the day, the week, the month, without having all of these things really begin to weigh you down in a way that you can't see your way out of it. Yeah. So if you're constantly finding ways to take a moment, then you're not trying to find a way to undo the stress because you didn't breathe at least once a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's in order to avoid this cumulative crisis effect, to just slowly mete out some regular relaxation or whatever, or mindfulness.
Exactly.
Basically, that's the
Exactly.
concept.
Yeah.
Is mindfulness sort of a catch-all term? I know I use it. I don't know if necessarily that's the right term for what we're
Right.
talking about, though.
It's used a lot, and I think it means different things to different people. And I think that since it's used a lot, it's lost some of its meaning, right? And so I don't use it as much, even though being mindful is part of a lot of what you do for self-care. You know, if my self-care in the afternoon is sitting down with a cup of tea, and when I sit down with that cup of tea, I spend all that time, it's maybe a minute, where I'm just focused on what's going on in front of me. The quality of the cup, the steam coming out of it, the smell of it, the look of how the tea moves around in the cup and shimmers with the light. You know, that's mindfulness. But when you sit down and take a moment to breathe, you know, that is being mindful of your breath, but it's also bringing in the actual systems that our nervous system has in place for us to tell our body that we can relax for a moment, that we are not in danger. And we need to find those moments, because if our nervous system is always on high alert, we will start to see things like high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, depression, anxiety. We need to allow our body to kind of reset by taking those moments and those breaks.
And as a caregiver, you know, running yourself in the red that much doesn't help you take care of. You can't take care of anybody else if you can't take care of yourself.
Exactly.
As cliche as that sounds.
Exactly. But I think we know that caregivers really give a lot of themselves, and it's really hard for them to even imagine taking time for themselves, because there's a good amount of guilt that comes out of that. And also a little maybe anxiety or frustration, because everyone's telling them they need to do this thing. I don't know how to do it. I don't know where they think I'm going to find the time to do it. And if I had a moment to breathe, I would just take a nap, right?
Yeah.
Right? So it's really, it's hard for the type of person, the personality that person has, for them to give all of themselves to take care of somebody and to really give up a part of their lives to then take a little bit of that back so that they can work to continue taking care of these people in their lives. It's what they need, but it's the opposite of what they're normally going to want to do. And I remember when my husband found out that he had cancer, there was no self-care in my life at that point. Everything fell out from underneath us. And, you know, you kind of do what you can to get through those really dark moments in your world when these things happen. But at some point, there has to be a change. And so figuring out how that is, either by, you know, working through this with someone, or, you know, just having this discussion, hey, what can I do in my life that I can change just a little bit, is worth it to try, at least.
So I was going to say, maybe just the very concept of thinking small is probably a huge mindset issue.
Thinking small and only identifying one thing that you can change at a time. Take some time to do that. And then once you kind of have that in your daily routine, add something else.
And you're not just coming at this from the standpoint of a teacher, of a practitioner, but you're somebody who has had to find that balance in yourself as a caregiver when your husband is sick.
Right. My husband will live with cancer for the rest of his life. It'll be a constant job for me. Doesn't feel like a job. It's more of a duty, something that I would do no matter what. And it changes. It changes depending on what's going on each year, each moment, each doctor's visit. And so I was a yoga teacher when I found out that he had cancer. And even as a yoga teacher, did not make self-care important for me because it was unexpected, which usually is how you become a caregiver. It's not something that you have planned for your future. So even someone who had the tools like me, life really kind of smacks you in the face sometimes, and it takes a while for you to recover and figure out what needs to happen. But the turning point for me was when all I could do was worry. And I realized I was not actually living with my family. I was just trying to get through. And so what I had to learn was how to learn again how to find a way to enjoy life instead of just trying to get through a day, a month, a year, because that's not a fun way to go through life. And even though, we all have people that we're caring for, and they could have all different experiences with the people they're taking care of, but, you're helping them. There's some kind of love there that's helping you get through that. Taking some time to be able to actually see that person, because as caregivers, I think sometimes we lose sight of actually seeing that human that we're taking care of and the love that we have for them, because it's a difficult emotional time.
Yeah.
So if we don't take that moment to allow ourselves to have a moment for ourselves so that we have a little bit of a lighter mindset than to be able to see and enjoy the person that we're taking care of. If we can't do that, then it really makes things difficult for all of us.
And it's got to be a hard realization to get to that point. I mean, that's a very, I don't know, I think it takes a lot of maturity for a person to understand that they also have to take care of themselves.
Right. I think sometimes it happens when it's forced to happen, right? You have been under so much stress that you have a medical condition that has now popped up because you weren't able to take care of yourself, and then you have a doctor saying you need to find out how to get rid of all the stress in your life, which is not going to happen. So really what you need to do is learn how to take a breath and let things relax and release in your body so that you can continue. Because what happens is your breath is kind of the first indication that something's going on. That's why if you're watching a scary movie, you gasp, or you hold your breath, or someone frightens you, you hold your breath, or if you're anxious, stressed, upset, ready to cry, your breath gets really shallow. Your breath tells you really what emotional state your body is in, and if you can learn how to take that as a cue and really start to see, all right, I just had this news, or I just had this interaction with somebody, I really need to take a deep breath, because most of us don't actually really breathe. We just breathe enough to keep us alive. And there's a system in place in our bodies that if we take a deep breath and we allow the organs and the diaphragm to move, it will actually start to bring in this rest and digest process that our nervous system is fully ready to enact, but it needs that signal. And so if you're not taking deep breaths anytime throughout the day, then you're never really flipping the switch on that. And so you're always in this stressed position. And so if someone comes to ask me, what is the one thing that I can do? I know I say it all the time to everybody, but if you could just take a couple of deep breaths, like really let that belly go. We're always holding it in. Just let it open. Take as deep of a breath as you can, where you're still comfortable, right? And then just slowly let it back out. Do that 2 or 3 times. I'll tell people, go to the bathroom and do it. Like, no one questions if you're locked in the bathroom, right? So just go, take a few deep breaths, and it'll really change the way you feel.
Oh, I'm going to try that out later.
Yeah.
I think we all probably need to try that out.
Definitely.
Sometimes. Well, Charlotte, thank you very much for joining us on this episode. We really appreciate it. I think definitely some very important tips for everyone, whether they're a caregiver or not, to sort of maintain a healthy, balance in all of our lives.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
The Generation to Generation podcast is sponsored by Shalom Home and produced by Jewfolk Inc. For more information, go to shalom.com, that's SHOLOM.com, or tcjewfolk.com/podcast.